We're back once again. Thank you guys for tuning in to Another World Audiobooks, your number one destination for free, high-quality audiobooks. We've been going on for years now, and we have hundreds of episodes for you to check out, dozens of audiobooks. If you want to explore the full library, make sure to go to anotherworldaudiobooks.com. That's where we've got the entire library of all the books we've done. You can also request a free audiobook, so if you see one in the backlist, but you don't want to download all the episodes individually, I'd be happy to send you the full free audiobook. Just fill out a form there and request which one you would like. I'd be happy to send it your way. Thank you guys for listening. We're getting really into the real crux of the mystery here today. I think you're really going to enjoy this chapter. Again, these have been quite long chapters. I've been doing my best to get them out every single week. I was a little bit late last week, but I'm going to be on time this week, which is nice. But if you want to support the podcast, one of the best ways that you can do that is by checking out the merch store. Again, anotherworldaudiobooks.com. Anything you purchase from there goes to help support the podcast. Or if you want to become a patron, there's ways to do that as well on the website. So make sure to check that out. Again, this is a free podcast, so if you can't do that or aren't able to do that, no worries at all. I'm still going to keep making these episodes for you. All that I ask is that you share the podcast. Telling other people about the podcast is the best way to help it grow, and I need your help to do that. So please share the podcast if you're enjoying it, and you can't become a patron or purchase merchandise. No worries, just spread the word. I really, really appreciate it. Thanks, guys, for listening, and without further ado, let's jump into the next chapter of The Hollow Needle. Chapter 3. The Corpse. At 6 o'clock in the evening, having finished all he had to do, Monsieur Filleul, accompanied by Mr. Bridoux, his clerk, stood waiting for the carriage which was to take him back to Dieppe. He seemed restless, nervous. Twice over he asked, "You haven't seen anything of young Boutelet, I suppose?" "No, Monsieur le Juge d'Instruction, I can't say I have." "Where on earth can he be? I haven't set eyes on him all day." Suddenly, he had an idea, handed his portfolio to Bridoux, ran round the chateau, and made for the ruins. Isidore Boutelet was lying near the cloisters, flat on his face, with one arm folded under his head, on the ground carpeted with pine needles. He seemed drowsing. "Hello, young man. What are you doing here? Are you asleep?" "I am not asleep. I've been thinking." "Ever since this morning?" "Ever since this morning." "It's not a question of thinking. One must see into things first, study facts, look for clues, establish connecting links. The time for thinking comes after, when one pieces all that together and discovers the truth." "Yes, I know. That's the usual way, the right one, I dare say. Mine is different. I think first. I try, above all, to get the general hang of the case, if I may so express myself. Then I imagine a reasonable and logical hypothesis, which fits in with the general idea, and then, and not before, I examine the facts to see if they agree with my hypothesis." "That's a funny method, and a terribly complicated one." "It's a sure method, Monsieur Filleul, which is more than can be said of yours." Come, facts are facts." "With your ordinary sort of adversary, yes. But given an enemy endowed with a certain amount of cunning, the facts are those which he happens to have selected. Take the famous clues upon which you base your inquiry. Why, he was at liberty to arrange them as he liked. And you see where that can lead you, into what mistakes and absurdities, when you are dealing with a man like Arsene Lupin. Holmlock Shears himself fell into the trap." "Arsene Lupin is dead." "No matter. His gang remains, and the pupils of such a master are masters themselves." Monsieur Filleul took Isidore by the arm, and leading him away. "Words, my young man, words. Here is something of more importance. Listen to me. Ganimard is otherwise engaged at this moment, and will not be here for a few days. On the other hand, the Comte de Gervois has telegraphed to Holmlock Shears, who has promised his assistance next week. Now, don't you think, young man, that it would be a feather in our cap if we were able to say to those two celebrities on the day of their arrival, 'Awful sorry, gentlemen, but we couldn't wait. The business is done'?" It was impossible for Monsieur Filleul to confess helplessness with greater candour. Boutelet suppressed a smile, and pretending not to see through the worthy magistrate, replied, "I confess, Monsieur le Juge d'Instruction, that if I was not present at your inquiry just now, it was because I hoped that you would consent to tell me the results. May I ask what you have learned?" "Well,
Last night, at 11 o'clock, the 3 gendarmes whom Sergeant Quevillon had left on guard at the chateau received a note from the sergeant telling them to hasten with all speed to Ouville, where they are stationed. They at once rode off, and when they arrived at Ouville, they discovered that they had been tricked, that the order was a forgery, and that there was nothing for them to do but return to Ambrumésy. This they did, accompanied by Sergeant Quevillon, but they were away for an hour and a half, and during this time the crime was committed.
In what circumstances?
Very simple circumstances indeed. A ladder was removed from the farm buildings and placed against the second story of the chateau. A pane of glass was cut out and a window opened. 2 men, carrying a dark lantern, entered Mademoiselle de Gevois' room and gagged her before she could cry out. Then, after binding her with cords, they softly opened the door of the room in which Mademoiselle de Saint-Véran was sleeping. Mademoiselle de Gevois heard a stifled moan, followed by the sound of a person struggling. A moment later, she saw 2 men carrying her cousin, who was also bound and gagged. They passed in front of her and went out through the window. Then Mademoiselle de Gevois, terrified and exhausted, fainted.
But what about the dogs? I thought Monsieur de Gevois had brought 2 almost wild sheepdogs which were let loose at night.
They were found dead, poisoned.
By whom? Nobody could get near them.
It's a mystery. The fact remains that 2 men crossed the ruins without let or hindrance, and went out by the little door which we have heard so much about. They passed through the copsewood, following the line of the disused quarries. It was not until they were nearly half a mile from the chateau, at the foot of the tree known as the Great Oak, that they stopped and executed their purpose.
If they came with the intention of killing Mademoiselle de Saint-Véran, why didn't they murder her in her room?
I don't know. Perhaps the incident that settled their determination only occurred after they had left the house. Perhaps the girl succeeded in releasing herself from her bonds. In my opinion, the scarf which was picked up was used to fasten her wrists. In any case, the blow was struck at the foot of the Great Oak. I have collected indisputable proofs.
But the body?
The body has not been found. But there is nothing excessively surprising in that. As a matter of fact, the trail which I followed brought me to the church at Varangeville and the old cemetery perched on the top of the cliff. From there it is a sheer precipice, a fall of over 300 feet to the rocks and the sea below. In a day or 2, a stronger tide than usual will cast up the body on the beach.
Obviously, this is all very simple.
Yes, it is all very simple, and doesn't trouble me in the least. Lupin is dead. His accomplices heard of it, and to revenge themselves, have killed Mademoiselle de Saint-Véran. These are facts which did not even require checking. But Lupin...
What about him?
What has become of him? In all probability, his confederates removed his corpse at the same time that they carried away the girl. But what proof have we? None at all. Any more than of his staying in the ruins, or of his death, or of his life. And this is the real mystery, Monsieur Boutelet. The murder of Mademoiselle Raymond solves nothing. On the contrary, it only complicates matters. What has been happening during the past 2 months at the Chateau d'Ambrumésy? If we don't clear up the riddle, young man, others will give us the go-by.
On what day are those others coming?
Wednesday. Tuesday, perhaps.
Boutelet seemed to be making an inward calculation, and then declared, Monsieur le Juge d'Instruction, this is Saturday. I have to be back at school on Monday evening. Well, if you will have the goodness to be here at 10 o'clock exactly on Monday morning, I will try to give you the key to the riddle.
Really, Monsieur Boutelet? Do you think so? Are you sure?
I hope so, at any rate.
And where are you going now?
I'm going to see if the facts consent to fit in with the general theory which I am beginning to perceive.
And if they don't fit in?
Well, Monsieur le Juge d'Instruction, said Boutelet with a laugh, then it will be their fault, and I must look for others which will prove more tractable. Till Monday, then?
Till Monday.
A few minutes later, Monsieur Filleul was driving toward Dieppe, while Isidore mounted a bicycle which he had borrowed from the Comte de Gevois, and rode off along the road to Yeurville and Côte-de-Bicancourt. There was one point in particular on which the young man was anxious to form a clear opinion, because this just appeared to him to be the enemy's weakest point. Objects of the size of the 4 Rubens pictures cannot be juggled away. They were bound to be somewhere. Granting that it was impossible to find them for the moment, might one not discover the road by which they had disappeared? What Beaudelet surmised was that the 4 pictures had undoubtedly been carried off in the motor car, but that before reaching Caudebec they were transferred to another car, which had crossed the Seine either above Caudebec or below it. Now, the first horseboat down the stream was at Quillebeuf, a greatly frequented ferry, and consequently dangerous. Upstream there was the ferryboat at La Meilleraie, a large but lonely market town, lying well off the main road. By midnight, Isidore had covered the 35 or 40 miles to La Meilleraie, and was knocking at the door of an inn by the waterside. He slept there, and in the morning questioned the ferrymen. They consulted the counterfoils in the traffic book. No motor car had passed on Thursday the 23rd of April.
"A horse-drawn vehicle, then?" suggested Beaudelet. "A cart? A van?"
"No, not either."
Isidore continued his inquiries all through the morning. He was on the point of leaving for Quillebeuf when the waiter of the inn at which he had spent the night said,
"I came back from my 13 days' training on the morning of which you are speaking, and I saw a cart, but it did not go across."
"Really?"
"No, they unloaded it onto a flat boat, a barge of sorts, which was moored to the wharf."
"And where did the cart come from?"
"Oh, I knew at once. It belonged to Master Vatinel, the carter."
"And where does he live?"
"At Louveteaux."
Beaudelet consulted his military map. The hamlet of Louveteaux lay where the highroad between Louveteaux and Caudebec was crossed by a little winding road that ran through the woods to La Meilleraie. Not until 6 o'clock in the evening did Isidore succeed in discovering Master Vatinel in a pothouse. Master Vatinel was one of those artful old Normans who are always on their guard, who distrust strangers, but who are unable to resist the lure of a gold coin or the influence of a glass or 2.
"Well, yes, sir. The men in the motor car that morning had told me to meet them at 5 o'clock at the crossroads. They gave me 4 great, big things, as high as that. One of them went with me, and we carted the things to the barge."
"You speak of them as if you knew them before."
"I should think I did know them. It was the 6th time they were employing me."
Isidore gave a start.
"The 6th time, you say? And since when?"
"Why, every day before that one, to be sure. But it was other things then. Great blocks of stone, or as smaller, longish ones, wrapped up in newspapers, which they carried as if they were worth I don't know what. Oh, I mustn't touch those on any account. But what's the matter? You turned quite white."
"Nothing. The heat of the room."
Beaudelet staggered out into the air. The joy, the surprise of the discovery made him feel giddy. He went back very quietly to Varengeville, slept in the village, spent an hour at the mayor's offices with the schoolmaster, and returned to the chateau. There he found a letter awaiting him, care of Monsieur le Comte de Gervois. It consisted of a single line. "Second warning. Hold your tongue. If not—"
"Come," he muttered. "I shall have to make up my mind, and take a few precautions for my personal safety. If not, as they say—"
It was 9 o'clock. He strolled about among the ruins, and then lay down near the cloisters and closed his eyes.
"Well, young man, are you satisfied with the results of your campaign?"
It was Monsieur Filleul.
"Delighted, Monsieur le Juge d'Instruction." "By which you mean to say—"
"By which I mean to say that I am prepared to keep my promise, in spite of this very uninviting letter."
He showed the letter to Monsieur Filleul.
"Oh, stuff and nonsense!" cried the magistrate. "I hope you won't let that prevent you—"
"From telling you what I know? No, Monsieur le Juge d'Instruction, I have given my word, and I shall keep it. In less than 10 minutes you shall know a part of the truth."
"A part?"
"Yes, in my opinion, Lupin's hiding-place does not constitute the whole of the problem. Far from it, but we shall see later on."
Monsieur Boutelet, nothing that you could do could astonish me now. But how were you able to discover—
Oh, in a very natural way. In the letter from old man Harlington to Monsieur Etienne de Vaudreuil, or rather to Lupin—
The intercepted letter?
Yes, there is a phrase which always puzzled me. After saying that the pictures are to be forwarded as arranged, he goes on to say, "You may add the rest, if you are able to succeed, which I doubt."
Yes, I remember.
What was this rest? A work of art? A curiosity? The chateau contains nothing of any value besides the Rubenses and the tapestries. Jewellery? There is very little, and what there is of it is not worth much. In that case, what could it be? On the other hand, was it conceivable that people so prodigiously clever as Lupin should not have succeeded in adding the rest, which they themselves had evidently suggested? A difficult undertaking, very likely. Exceptional, surprising, I dare say, but possible, and therefore certain, since Lupin wished it.
And yet he failed. Nothing has disappeared.
He did not fail. Something has disappeared.
Yes, the Rubenses, but—
The Rubenses and something beside. Something which had been replaced by a similar thing, as in the case of the Rubenses. Something much more uncommon, much rarer, much more valuable than the Rubenses.
Well, what? You're killing me with this procrastination.
While talking, the two men had crossed the ruins, turned toward the little door, and were now walking beside the chapel. Boutelet stopped. "Do you really want to know, Monsieur le Juge d'Instruction?"
Of course I do.
Boutelet was carrying a walking stick, a strong, knotted stick. Suddenly, with a backstroke of this stick, he smashed one of the little statues that adorned the front of the chapel.
Why, you're mad!
Shouted Monsieur Filleul, beside himself, rushing at the broken pieces of the statue.
You're mad! That old saint was an admirable bit of work.
An admirable bit of work? Echoed Isidore, giving a whirl which brought down the Virgin Mary. Monsieur Filleul took hold of him round the body.
Young man, I won't allow you to commit—
A wise man from the east came toppling to the ground, followed by a manger containing the mother and child.
If you stir another limb, I fire.
The Count de Gervois had appeared upon the scene, and was cocking his revolver. Boutelet burst out laughing. That's right, Monsieur le Comte. Blaze away. Take a shot at them, as if you were at a fair. Wait a bit, this chap carrying his head in his hands. St. John the Baptist fell, shattered to pieces.
Ugh!
Shouted the Count, pointing his revolver.
You young vandal! Those masterpieces!
Sham, Monsieur le Count.
What? What's that?
Roared Monsieur Filleul, wresting the Count de Gervois' weapon from him. Sham, repeated Boutelet. Paper pulp and plaster.
Oh, nonsense. It can't be true.
Hollow plaster, I tell you, nothing at all. The Count stooped and picked up a sliver of the statuette. Look at it, Monsieur le Count, and see for yourself. It's plaster. Rusty, musty, mildewed plaster, made to look like old stone, but plaster for all that. Plaster cast. That's all that remains of your perfect masterpiece. That's what they've done in just a few days. That's what the Sieur Charpenais, who copied the Rubenses, prepared a year ago. He seized Monsieur Filleul's arm in his turn. What do you think of it, Monsieur le Juge d'Instruction? Isn't it fine? Isn't it grand? Isn't it gorgeous? The chapel has been removed. A whole Gothic chapel collected stone by stone. A whole population of statues captured and replaced by those chaps in stucco. One of the most magnificent specimens of an incomparable artistic period confiscated. The chapel, in short, stolen. Isn't it immense? Oh, Monsieur le Juge d'Instruction, what a genius the man is!
You're allowing yourself to be carried away, Monsieur Boutelet.
One can't be carried away too much, monsieur, when one has to do with people like that. Everything above the average deserves our admiration, and this man soars above everything. There is in his flight a wealth of imagination, a force and power, a skill and freedom that sends a thrill through me.
Pity he is dead,
said Monsieur Filleul with a grin.
He'd have ended by stealing the towers of Notre Dame.
Isidore shrugged his shoulders. Don't laugh, monsieur. He upsets you, dead though he may be.
I don't say not. I don't say not, Monsieur Boutelet. I confess that I feel a certain excitement now that I'm about to set eyes on him, unless, indeed, his friends have taken away the body."
"And always admitting,"
observed the Count de Gervois,
"that it was really he who was wounded by my poor niece."
"It was he, beyond a doubt, Monsieur le Comte,"
declared Boutelet.
"It was he, believe me, who fell in the ruins under the shot fired by Mademoiselle de Saint-Véran. It was he whom she saw rise, and who fell again, and dragged himself toward the cloisters to rise again for the last time. This by a miracle, which I will explain to you presently, to rise again for the last time, and reach this stone shelter, which was to be his tomb."
And Boutelet struck the threshold of the chapel with his stick.
"Eh? What?"
cried Monsieur Filleul, taken aback.
"His tomb? Do you think that the impenetrable hiding-place—"
"It was here." "There," he repeated.
"But we searched it."
"Badly."
"There is no hiding place here,"
protested Monsieur de Gervois.
"I know the chapel."
"Yes, there is, Monsieur le Count. Go to the mayor's office at Varangeville, where they have collected all the papers that used to be in the old parish of Ambrumésy, and you will learn from those papers, which belong to the 18th century, that there is a crypt below the chapel. This crypt doubtless dates back to the Roman chapel, upon the site of which the present one was built."
"But how can Lupin have known this detail?"
asked Monsieur Filleul.
"In a very simple manner, because of the works which he had to execute to take away the chapel."
Come, Monsieur Boutelet, you're exaggerating. He had not taken away the whole chapel. Look, not one of the stones of this top course has been touched."
"Obviously, he cast and took away only what had a financial value, the wrought stones, the sculptures, the statuettes, the whole treasure of little columns and carved arches. He did not trouble about the groundwork of the building itself. The foundations remain."
"Therefore, Monsieur Boutelet, Lupin was not able to make his way into the crypt."
At that moment, Monsieur de Gervois, who had been to call a servant, returned with the key of the chapel. He opened the door. The three men entered. After a short examination, Boutelet said,
"The flagstones on the ground have been respected, as one might expect, but it is easy to perceive that the high altar is nothing more than a cast. Now, generally, the staircase leading to the crypt opens in front of the high altar and passes under it."
"What do you conclude?"
"I conclude that Lupin discovered the crypt when working at the altar."
The Count sent for a pickaxe, and Boutelet attacked the altar. The plaster flew to right and left. He pushed the pieces aside as he went on.
"By Jove,"
muttered Monsieur Filleul.
"I am eager to know—"
"So am I,"
said Boutelet, whose face was pale with anguish. He hurried his blows, and suddenly his pickaxe, which until then had encountered no resistance, struck against a harder material and rebounded. There was a sound of something falling in, and all that remained of the altar went tumbling into the gap after the block of stone which had been struck by the pickaxe. Boutelet bent forward. A puff of cold air rose to his face. He lit a match, and moved it from side to side over the gap.
"The staircase begins farther forward than I expected, under the entrance flags almost. I can see the last steps, there, right at the bottom."
"Is it deep?"
3 or 4 yards. The steps are very high, and there are some missing."
"It is hardly likely," said Monsieur Filleul, "that the accomplices can have had time to remove the body from the cellar when they were engaged in carrying off Mademoiselle de Saint-Véran during the short absence of the gendarme. Besides, why should they? No, in my opinion, the body is here."
A servant brought them a ladder. Boutelet let it down through the opening and fixed it, after groping among the fallen fragments, holding the 2 uprights firmly.
"Will you go down, Monsieur Filleul?"
he asked. The magistrate, holding a candle in his hand, ventured down the ladder. The Count de Gervois followed him, and Boutelet, in his turn, placed his foot on the first rung. Mechanically, he counted 18 rungs, while his eyes examined the crypt, where the glimmer of the candle struggled against the heavy darkness. But, at the bottom, his nostrils were assailed by one of those foul and violent smells which linger in the memory for many a long day. And suddenly, a trembling hand seized him by the shoulder.
"Well, what is it?"
Boutelet,
stammered Monsieur Filleul.
Boutelet,
He could not get a word out for terror.
Come, Monsieur le Juge d'Instruction, compose yourself.
Beaudelet, he is there.
Huh?
Yes, there is something under the big stone that broke off the altar. I pushed the stone, and I touched. I shall never forget.
Where is it?
On this side. Don't you notice the smell? And then look, see.
He took the candle and held it towards a motionless form stretched upon the ground.
Oh!
Exclaimed Beaudelet in a horror-stricken tone. The three men bent down quickly. The corpse lay half-naked, lean, frightful. The flesh, which had the greenish hue of soft wax, appeared in places through the torn clothes. But the most hideous thing, the thing that had drawn a cry of terror from the young man's lips, was the head which had just been crushed by the block of stone. The shapeless head, a repulsive mass in which not one feature could be distinguished. Beaudelet took 4 strides up the ladder and fled into the daylight and the open air. Monsieur Filleul found him again lying flat on the ground, with his hands glued to his face.
I congratulate you, Beaudelet, he said. In addition to the discovery of the hiding place, there are 2 points on which I have been able to verify the correctness of your assertions. First of all, the man on whom Mademoiselle de Saint-Véran fired was indeed Arsene Lupin, as you said from the start. Also, he lived in Paris under the name of Etienne de Vaudreuil. His linen is marked with the initials E.V. That ought to be sufficient proof, I think. Don't you?
Isidore did not stir.
Monsieur le Count has gone to have a horse put to. They are sending for Dr. Jouet, who will make the usual examination. In my opinion, death must have taken place a week ago at least. The state of decomposition of the corpse. You don't seem to be listening.
Yes.
What I say is based upon absolute reasons. Thus, for instance...
Monsieur Filleul continued his demonstrations, without, however, obtaining any more manifest marks of attention. But Monsieur de Jervois's return interrupted his monologue. The Count brought 2 letters. One was to tell him that Holmlock Shears would arrive next morning.
Capital!
Cried Monsieur Filleul joyfully.
Inspector Ganimard will be here too. It will be delightful.
The other letter is for you, Monsieur le Juge d'Instruction,
said the Count.
Better and better,
said Monsieur Filleul after reading it.
There will certainly not be much for those 2 gentlemen to do. Monsieur Beaudelet, I hear from Dieppe that the body of a young woman was found by some shrimpers this morning on the rocks.
Beaudelet gave a start.
What's that? The body?
Of a young woman. The body is horribly mutilated, they say, and it would be impossible to establish the identity, but for a very narrow little gold curb bracelet on the right arm, which has been encrusted in the swollen skin. Now, Mademoiselle de Saint-Véran used to wear a gold curb bracelet on her right arm. Evidently, therefore, Monsieur le Count, this is the body of your poor niece, which the sea must have washed to that distance. What do you think, Beaudelet?
Nothing. Or, rather, yes, everything is connected, as you see, and there is no link missing in my argument. All the facts, one after the other, however contradictory, however disconcerting they may appear, end by supporting the supposition which I imagined from the first.
I don't understand.
You soon will. Remember, I promised you the whole truth.
But it seems to me...
A little patience, Monsieur le Juge d'Instruction. So far, you have had no cause to complain of me. It is a fine day. Go for a walk, lunch at the chateau, smoke your pipe. I shall be back by 4 o'clock. As for my school, well, I don't care. I shall take the night train.
They had reached the outhouses at the back of the chateau. Beaudelet jumped on his bicycle and rode away. At Dieppe, he stopped at the office of the local paper, the Vigie, and examined the file for the last fortnight. Then he went on to the market town of Envermou, 6 or 7 miles farther. At Envermou, he talked to the mayor, the rector, and the local policeman. The church clock struck 3. His inquiry was finished. He returned, singing for joy. He pressed upon the 2 pedals turn by turn, with an equal and powerful rhythm. His chest opened wide to take in the keen air that blew from the sea. and from time to time he forgot himself to the extent of uttering shouts of triumph to the sky. When he thought of the aim which he was pursuing, and of the success that was crowning his efforts, Ambrumisi appeared in sight. He coasted at full speed down the slope leading to the chateau. The top rows of venerable trees that lined the road seemed to run to meet him, and to vanish behind him forthwith. And, all at once, he uttered a cry. In a sudden vision, he had seen a rope stretched from one tree to another across the road. His machine gave a jolt and stopped short. Boutelet was flung 3 yards forward with immense violence, and it seemed to him that only chance, a miraculous chance, caused him to escape a heap of pebbles on which, logically, he ought to have broken his head. He lay for a few seconds stunned. Then, all covered with bruises, with the skin flayed from his knees, he examined the spot. On the right lay a small wood, by which his aggressor had no doubt fled. Boutelet untied the rope. To the tree on the left around which it was fastened, a small piece of paper was fixed with string. Boutelet unfolded it and read, "The third and last warning." He went on to the chateau, put a few questions to the servants, and joined the examining magistrate in a room on the ground floor, at the end of the right wing, where Monsieur Filleul used to sit in the course of his operations. Monsieur Filleul was writing, with his clerk seated opposite to him. At a sign from him, the clerk left the room, and the magistrate exclaimed,
"Why, what have you been doing to yourself, Monsieur Boutelet? Your hands are covered with blood."
It's nothing, said the young man. "Just a fall occasioned by this rope, which was stretched in front of my bicycle. I will only ask you to observe that the rope comes from the chateau. Not longer than 20 minutes ago, it was being used to dry linen on outside the laundry."
"You don't mean to say so?"
"Monsieur le Juge d'Instruction, I am being watched here by someone in the very heart of the place who can see me, who can hear me, and who, minute by minute, observes my actions and knows my intentions."
"Do you think so?"
"I am sure of it. It is for you to discover him, and you will have no difficulty in that. As for myself, I want to have finished and to give you the promised explanations. I have made faster progress than our adversaries expected, and I am convinced that they mean to take vigorous measures on their side. The circle is closing around me. The danger is approaching. I feel it."
"Nonsense, Boutelet."
"You wait and see. For the moment, let us lose no time, and first, a question on a point which I want to have done with at once. Have you spoken to anybody of that document which Sergeant Quevillon picked up and handed you in my presence?"
"No, indeed, not a soul. But do you attach any value?"
"The greatest value. It's an idea of mine, an idea, I confess, which does not rest upon a proof of any kind, for up to the present I have not succeeded in deciphering the document, and therefore I am mentioning it so that we need not come back to it."
Boutelet pressed his hand on Monsieur Filleul's and whispered,
"Don't speak. There's someone listening outside."
The gravel creaked. Boutelet ran to the window and leaned out.
"There's no one there, but the border has been trodden down. We can easily identify the footprints."
He closed the window and sat down again.
"You see, Monsieur le Juge d'Instruction, the enemy has even ceased to take the most ordinary precautions. He has not time left. He too feels that the hour is urgent. Let us be quick, therefore, and speak, since they do not wish us to speak."
He laid the document on the table and held it in position unfolded.
"One observation, Monsieur le Juge d'Instruction, to begin with. The paper consists almost entirely of dots and figures, and in the first 3 lines and the 5th, the only ones with which we are to do at present, for the 4th seems to present an entirely different character, not one of those figures is higher than the figure 5. There is, therefore, a great chance that each of these figures represents one of the 5 vowels, taken in alphabetical order. Let us put down the result."
He wrote on a separate piece of paper, E.A.A.E. 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 AI.EU.E. Then he continued,
"As you see, this does not give us much to go upon. The key is, at the same time, very easy, because the inventor has contented himself with replacing the vowels by figures and the consonants by dots, and very difficult, if not impossible, because he has taken no further trouble to complicate the problem.
It is certainly pretty obscure.
Let us try to throw some light upon it. The second line is divided into two parts, and the second part appears in such a way that it probably forms one word. If we now seek to replace the intermediary dots by consonants, we arrive at the conclusion, after searching and casting about, that the only consonants which are logically able to support the vowels are also logically able to produce only one word. The word demoiselle.
That would refer to Mademoiselle de Jouvois and Mademoiselle de Saint-Véran.
Undoubtedly.
And do you see nothing more?
Yes, I also note an hiatus in the middle of the last line, and, if I apply a similar operation to the beginning of the line, I at once see that the only consonant able to take the place of the dot between the diphthongs phi and u is the letter G, and that, when I have thus formed the first 5 letters of the word igi, it is natural and inevitable that, with the next 2 dots and the final e, I should arrive at the word aiguille.
Yes, the word aiguille forces itself upon us.
Finally, for the last word I have 3 vowels and 3 consonants. I cast about again, I try all the letters, one after the other, and starting with the principle that the first 2 letters are necessary consonants, I find that 3 words apply: fleuve, preuve, and creuse. I eliminate the words fleuve and preuve, as possessing no possible relation to a needle, and I keep the word creuse.
Making hollow needle? By Jove, I admit that your solution is correct, because it needs must be. But how does it help us?
Not at all, said Beaudelet in a thoughtful tone. Not at all for the moment. Later on, we shall see. I have an idea that a number of things are included in the puzzling conjunction of those 2 words. Aiguille creuse. What is troubling me at present is rather the material on which the document is written, the paper employed. Do they still manufacture this sort of rather coarse-grained parchment? And then this ivory colour, and those folds, the wear of those folds, and lastly, look, those marks of red sealing wax on the back. At that moment, Beaudelet was interrupted by Bridoux, the magistrate's clerk, who opened the door and announced the unexpected arrival of the chief public prosecutor. Monsieur Filleul rose.
Anything new? Is Monsieur le Procureur Général downstairs?
No, Monsieur le Juge d'Instruction. Monsieur le Procureur Général has not left his carriage. He is only passing through Ambrumésy, and begs you to be good enough to go down to him at the gate. He only has a word to say to you.
That's curious,
muttered Monsieur Filleul.
However, we shall see. Excuse me, Beaudelet, I shan't be long.
He went away. His footsteps sounded outside. Then the clerk closed the door, turned the key, and put it in his pocket.
"Hello!"
exclaimed Beaudelet, greatly surprised.
"What are you locking us in for?"
"We shall be able to talk so much better,"
retorted Bridoux. Beaudelet rushed toward another door, which led to the next room. He had understood. The accomplice was Bridoux, the clerk of the examining magistrate himself. Bridoux grinned.
"Don't hurt your fingers, my young friend. I have the key of that door, too."
"There's the window!"
cried Beaudelet.
"Too late,"
said Bridoux, planting himself in front of the casement, revolver in hand. Every chance of retreat was cut off. There was nothing more for Isidore to do, nothing except to defend himself against the enemy who was revealing himself with such brutal daring. He crossed his arms.
"Good,"
mumbled the clerk.
"And now let us waste no time."
He took out his watch.
"Our worthy Monsieur Filleul will walk down to the gate. At the gate he will find nobody, of course. No more public prosecutor than my eye. Then he will come back. That gives us about 4 minutes. It will take me 1 minute to escape by this window, clear through the little door by the ruins, and jump on the motorcycle waiting for me. That leaves 3 minutes, which is just enough."
Bridoux was a queer sort of misshapen creature, who balanced on a pair of very long spindle legs, a huge trunk, as round as the body of a spider, and furnished with immense arms. A bony face and a low, small, stubborn forehead pointed to the man's narrow obstinacy. Beaudelet felt a weakness in his legs and staggered. He had to sit down.
"Speak," he said. "What do you want?"
"The paper. I've been looking for it for 3 days."
"I haven't got it."
"You're lying. I saw you put it back in your pocketbook when I came in."
"Next?"
"Next, you must undertake to keep quite quiet. You're annoying us. Leave us alone and mind your own business. Our patience is at an end."
He had come nearer, with the revolver still aimed at the young man's head, and spoke in a hollow voice, with a powerful stress upon each syllable that he uttered. His eyes were hard, his smile cruel. Beaudelet gave a shudder. It was the first time that he was experiencing the sense of danger, and such danger. He felt himself in the presence of an implacable enemy, endowed with blind and irresistible strength.
"And next?"
he asked, with less assurance in his voice.
"Next? Nothing. You will be free. We will forget."
There was a pause. Then Bridoux resumed.
"There is only a minute left. You must make up your mind. Come, old chap, don't be a fool. We are the stronger, you know, always and everywhere. Quick, the paper."
Isidore did not flinch. With a livid and terrified face, he remained master of himself, nevertheless, and his brain remained clear amid the breakdown of his nerves. The little black hole of the revolver was pointing at 6 inches from his eyes. The finger was bent, and obviously pressing on the trigger. It only wanted a moment.
"The paper,"
repeated Bridoux.
"If not—"
"Here it is,"
said Beaudelet. He took out his pocketbook and handed it to the clerk, who seized it eagerly.
"Capital. We've come to our senses. I've no doubt there's something to be done with you. You're troublesome, but full of common sense. I'll talk about it to my pals. And now I'm off. Goodbye."
He pocketed his revolver and turned back the fastening of the window. There was a noise in the passage.
"Goodbye,"
he said again.
"I'm only just in time."
But the idea stopped him. With a quick movement, he examined the pocketbook.
"Damn it, blast it!"
He grated through his teeth.
"The paper's not there. You've done me."
He leaped into the room. 2 shots rang out. Isidore, in his turn, had seized his pistol and fired.
"Missed, old chap,"
shouted Bridoux.
"Your hand's shaking. You're afraid."
They caught each other round the body and came down to the floor together. There was a violent and incessant knocking at the door. Isidore's strength gave way, and he was at once overcome by his adversary. It was the end. A hand was lifted over him, armed with a knife, and fell. A fierce pain burst into his shoulder. He let go. He had an impression of someone fumbling in the inside pocket of his jacket and taking the paper from it. Then, through the lowered veil of his eyelids, he half saw the man stepping over the windowsill. The same newspapers which, on the following morning, related the last episodes that had occurred at the Château d'Ambrumésy, the trickery at the chapel, the discovery of Arsene Lupin's body, and of Raymond's body, and lastly, the murderous attempt made upon Beaudelet by the clerk to the examining magistrate, also announced 2 further pieces of news: the disappearance of Ganimard, and the kidnapping of Holmlock Shears, in broad daylight, in the heart of London, at the moment when he was about to take the train for Dover. Lupin's gang, therefore, which had been disorganized for a moment by the extraordinary ingenuity of a 17-year-old schoolboy, was now resuming the offensive, and was winning all along the line from the first. Lupin's 2 great adversaries, Shears and Ganimard, were put away. Isidore Beaudelet was disabled. The police were powerless. For the moment, there was no one left capable of struggling against such enemies. Oh my goodness, we went from Sherlock Holmes to Holmlock Shears. I'm really curious what she's going to change, or the author is going to change Watson. Get it wrong. He changed Watson to Wilson, And so now that Sherlock has changed again, I wonder if Wilson's going to get changed again too. He's probably not even going to be in this book, though, I mean, honestly, because Maurice LeBlanc was obviously not a big fan of Watson or Wilson, based on the previous book that we did. If you don't know what I'm talking about, that means that you are listening to the third book in a trilogy, and you shouldn't be yet because you haven't listened to books 1 and 2. So make sure to go to anotherworldaudiobooks.com. We've got all the books we've done listed there, as well as the Lupin books that we've done so far. You can actually just click right on it. It'll take you to the first episode in the podcast chronology if you want to just listen to it on the podcast or on the backlist there, or if you want to purchase the full thing, you can do that as well. Just go to anotherworldaudiobooks.com and you can purchase the book is linked there to purchase it as well. If you search my name, Brady Smith, and then on audiobook platforms, whether you use audiobooks.com, Chirp, Google Book, or Google Play, or whatever it's called, you can usually find the books that I've done as well just by searching that. But probably the easiest way to do it is go to anotherworldaudiobooks.com. And like I said, that is a great way to support the podcast. These are super long episodes, and it's been a struggle to get them out. So any support you can throw my way is greatly appreciated, so I can keep doing this, because I do enjoy it and I love being able to put these out here. And if any support you can throw my way is greatly appreciated. So thanks guys for listening, and we'll catch you next week.